Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. Welcome to the Right Mindset podcast, where we talk to authors, learn a little bit about their writing style, and of course, we just talk about the industry sometimes here and there. And I'm here with Stefanie Nici, everybody, author extraordinaire of romance and other styles of authory.
That
She
sounds
also
about
has
right.
a YouTube channel, and I believe you talk about writing and the process of writing as well on your channel, correct?
I do. I do. There's just so many things that I love to share. And if I could, I don't know, help somebody with something in my videos, then yeah, that's why I do them.
Nice.
I enjoy it. I love to talk about writing. That's why I'm here today. Thank you for having me.
Now, do you ever play the piano?
I do not. I know my lovely piano back there. I do not. It was a gift.
Oh, it's a gift.
It was a gift from
It was
Neil
literally a gift.
Sedaka.
It is a gift. It's a, I believe it is a gift.
I just hope I don't have to pay any taxes on it.
Only on the white keys. You don't have to
Only on those ivories.
Yeah, those 88 ivories, they just get in the way sometimes. I
They
don't
get
know.
expensive, yeah.
So yeah, so you have a YouTube channel. You're a part of the YouTube community, which I believe is exactly how we met. I went onto the YouTube group on Facebook, believe it or not, and I've been trying to. This is the 5th season, so I was like, let me try to get some new faces in here because I've been having a lot of friends on. You know,
Oh, okay.
you know what I'm saying, and I love every one of them. But how many? I've had some on for 5 times.
Oh, wow. Okay. And it's people that you already know, so sometimes it gets hard to, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we end up talking about nothing but what we know as friends, like we're just, and so how many times can you hear that they outline? You know what I'm saying? Hey, if that is aspetta, right? So with that said, one of the values of this podcast is always to kind of encourage aspiring writers or writers that have been doing it for a while. That the process is different for everybody, and that no one way is correct. The way that works best for you is the right way, and also you could evolve. Maybe you'll hear something, try something, and that's why I have guests on, and that's one of the reasons I reached out for new faces like yourself, Stefanie Nici, and so let's go into it. Maybe step by step. Sometimes I ask this question, and they go on for it, but let's do step by step. What is your approach to writing a story when you're like, I have a story, I need to do a story? How does that first step work for you?
Okay. So I usually flesh it out or, think about it in my head and usually not for too long. Sometimes I'll get an idea from daily life or something that I watched or something that I read or a memory. And then it's in my head if I'm not like in front of the laptop at that moment. Sometimes I'll type it in my phone, also in my notes. But as soon as I can, I sit down in front of the laptop and I'll start somewhere. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll be like some witty banter, little piece of dialogue here, or like a beautiful like scene or emotional scene, something like that. I'll just start anywhere. Like
You
boom,
like the brainstorming.
there I am.
Just
Yes.
just get it out.
I'm
Does that mean you're willing to just not only do you get anything out, but while you're getting ready to kind of go a little deeper, are you comfortable with saying, well, just because I wrote this down doesn't mean I need it? Are you
yes.
comfortable with that?
Yes. Sometimes there's things though that I wish I could keep that I wrote, but it doesn't fit later on. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So sometimes I'll take like that snippet, but then I always save my old drafts anyway. I'm like loaded all over files, old drafts.
Hmm.
But I do want to keep some things that I write, but it just doesn't fit and I have to cut it out.
Hey, look, as an epic fantasy writer, there are so many characters I have that die and come back before I even write. If people only knew, and then when they're like, I really love that character, I go, all right, I think I made the right choice. Now I definitely have to kill them. But
Because they love them. You got to
yeah, because they love them. I was like, all
kill
right,
your
let's get them.
darlings, right? That's what Stephen King says. Kill your
Yeah,
darlings, I think. I
yeah,
quoted
he
him
also says
correctly.
throw monsters into the corner of a room and has child intercourse. But that
Oh, I never
but
heard that one. Oh my god.
you know from so in the story the children at the in the first half of the book,
Oh,
when they want to commemorate they beat the clown.
right.
So in the movie or the older movie, they just like sort of like cut their fingers and they do like blood brother stuff. But in the books, they all make love to love. They all have sex with the girl. It's a group sex of these
Oh,
like
all right.
kids.
Let's. I don't write about that. I don't watch that. I never even seen it. That's a.
Well, the movies don't do it. So
I never even seen.
yeah, there's like a TV movie of it as well, which actually was really good.
I think
With
they
Tim
remade
Curry.
it with Curry.
Yeah. That's
I
him.
forgot his first name.
Georgie, you want
Is
to come
it
down? No,
Is
it's Tim Curry. It's Tim
Oh, that's
Curry, but
Tim
he,
Curry. Tim
he
Curry.
does
I
the
didn't know
clown.
that
He
name was
tells Georgie,
the English guy.
yeah. You want a balloon, Georgie?
I remember that on the trailer. That was a little creepy. A lot of people have nightmares from that. A lot of people, that original movie was upsetting. I mean, I could see why, especially if you get an idea or a vibe about what it's about. It's pretty disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't clowning around with that movie. They
I like what you did there.
yeah, well, Stephen King is also a notorious pantser. He talks about, like, I just kind of, if I start feeling stale, like I said, I throw a monster in the corner of the room, and that monster's metaphorical. It could just be a problem. He's like, how do I get these characters out of a problem? When you're brainstorming, is that the beginning process of what you're going to do to pants, or are you more of an outliner? Do you like a little bit of direction?
Yeah, I do not outline whatsoever. I mean, I'll make notes here and there if I can't actually sit down and type it. But I'm a pantser all the way. I can appreciate the value in outline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But for me, it takes a lot of time. I like to work a little faster. And with some stories, if I think about them too much or work on them too much, something in my brain maybe like clicks, like, okay, you're done, moving on, time to go on to another story. You know what I mean? I try not to take up that much time. So that's why I don't outline.
Is that why you like writing short stories and collections of short stories?
Yes, the short stories, the short stories was something that my husband suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never really thought about it before. And then I said, you know what? I haven't released a book in a while. I think I am going to write a short story. I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And I tried it. And I said, wow, I really like this, because it gets that feeling to write out. You know what I mean? That storytelling, like I want to tell a story and share it with the world. So that to me is why those short stories are so great. But yes, that's why, because I like to work a little quicker if I can, because it's hard. I write full time, but there's other things I do at home. I cook, I clean, you know what I mean? I don't have that time where I could just sit in front of the laptop all the time. And I also am a content creator on social media. So that also takes away from my writing time.
Yeah.
So if I have an idea for a story and it's, to me, okay to be a short story, then I'm going to write it. That's my new thing now. I did get a compliment though on one of my stories where a couple of people in the reviews said they wished it was longer. So that really made me feel good. Like it could have maybe been a book. I don't know. Maybe it still can be a book.
Maybe it could be a novella where it's a little longer, but not too long, right?
Yes, I thought about writing those too. So we'll see what happens in the future.
We'll see where that goes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And about the content, I completely understand. I try to take 2 to 3 months out of the year, and then I completely write and film my full year of scheduled content, and then I just put it all up. Yeah. And I just do a schedule or a premiere or whatever I have to do, and then I can focus on writing, because I'm a full-time writer and a developmental editor, and I'm doing this forever. So I could completely, when you have to eat, that you're like, I just want to be writing. I don't want to be eating.
That's how, yeah.
Or
like food shopping, or I'd rather be writing. I know exactly. It seems like such a waste of time, right? It's like such a waste of time.
Why do you eat pizza so much? Because then I don't have to cook it or clean. Like I just go. I need sustenance, and then I got to get back to the table because I want to write.
Exactly, and you can take your pizza to the laptop too, or wherever you're working on, right? Nice and easy, yeah.
And it sucks because I write epic fantasy, so I can't say this pizza because they're not on Earth, so I have to come up with this new name for pizza
Yes. No, I totally get it. Yeah. You got to be creative with that epic fantasy. That's for sure.
You have to be, but you're more known for modern kind of writing and romance and stuff like that. So you don't really have to fall into like I have to change the name of this thing because how can they be French fries? France doesn't exist. Um, do you fall into the opposite version of that where you have to do excess research just to make sure you're getting things correct?
Yes. Well, in one of my books, I had to make sure in the Smoke Tree, that was my first book, as a matter of fact, I had to make sure my locations in Pennsylvania were correct. And then the characters go on a romantic rendezvous in Pennsylvania, and the love interest of the main character, Tora, takes her on, horseback riding. So I had to learn a lot about the saddle and the spurs and which now, of course, I forgot, but I did have to do research
Mm-hmm.
about riding a horse where she was, sliding her foot and,
Yeah,
you
you got to
know,
slide your foot. You
where
got to
she,
lift up slightly for the hops. You got to,
yes,
yep,
you got to hold on to
the nubbin.
I don't remember that. The nubbin. I don't even remember, but that makes sense because that's what it looks like, a nubbin.
Well, that's why I just was like the nubbin. I don't know what it is, but it's nubbin to me. Um, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's important to understand like the movement of a horse if it's definitely narratively important. Um, so all right, so you brainstorm, you pants it out, you do your research. But do you start? Some people like to kind of write out scenes here and there. Are you more of a chronological writer, or do you sort of go, "Well, this is the scene I have in my head. Let me work on it."
That's what I do. I just, yeah, the scene that pops up into my head, into my mind at that moment, that's what I type out. And then later on, I piece everything together. I read and reread so many times. And still, of course, there's going to be errors, which is amazing. But I read and reread so many times just to make sure that everything fits, that nothing slipped in that I was supposed to,
Yeah,
remove or change. Sometimes you'll change a name. Sometimes, I don't know, you could be like midway through the story. Names don't come to me as quickly as I would like.
mm,
Sometimes it takes a little bit of time because I have to see more about how the character is. And sometimes maybe the name won't fit.
yeah. I've met many Thomases where I'm like, "You're not a Thomas."
Yeah. See, so like the name, I don't know, has to fit for me as I write the story. And I'm also not very visual and descriptive in my mind when it comes to faces. They're
Yeah,
more like a blur.
you're like they had eyes, a nose.
Yeah. It's, it's
They
just
look
like
like a man.
it's just like a blur. Yeah. A figure that looks like a man, a figure that looks like a woman, a figure that the animals seem to,
They make sense.
yeah, they seem to be more
Yeah.
clear for me than the actual people. It's just like a big blur. But
Yeah, dogs are loving, and then people are scary. I get it. No,
yeah. Who knows? I could read something right there. You never know.
yeah. All right. So, yeah, you work on a scene, and you kind of. But when you're piecing them together,
Hmm.
uh, do you find yourself needing? Oh, really quick about the names. Do you do placeholder names? Like sometimes what I'll do is I'll just write character one, like
Mm,
because I'm from the film industry, so like you have the one position, like is one on set? Is one on set? Like that's your primary principal,
right.
right? So I just number them in their primaries.
I'll use I'll use the word blank or blah or
Or blue.
usually it starts with a B for some reason. And I don't mean, when I say blah, I don't mean like blase or blah. For
Yeah.
some reason, I'm typing and the name doesn't come to me, and I don't want it. I'm a fast typer, and I don't want to stop typing, and I don't want to lose that thought at the moment because
Oh yeah.
to me, you never get it back the way it was.
Yeah.
Like sometimes if I'm on the sofa and we're watching TV and I'm like, I gotta go inside a minute because I'm never gonna get that original feeling back.
Hmm.
So I like to type, and then if I don't have the name, I'll put blah or blank.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
basically
because
what
then you
I
could just do copy. You could do search and then replace when you do come up with a name.
yes, and I can. It usually doesn't go on for too long though. Just a few scenes, and I have a name.
Yeah.
Or I have a name, and then as I work on the story, I'm like, I really don't like this name too much, or it doesn't fit, and then I'll change it.
Now, when you get to a certain point, though, like you're saying, you discover the character's voice. Do
Oh,
you,
I love that.
when you get there, do you go, all right, I definitely have to go back and read through the book and kind of clean up those scenes to give their personality.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say, the personality, because everything has to flow and everything has to fit. And maybe if, the main character wouldn't have acted a certain way, I have to change that if it's out of character for her, because the reader's going to pick that up right away. Doesn't seem like the character's personality.
And what is your, do you have a concern or a worry that maybe if you go back and change it, you're taking away the arc of the character, because like maybe their personality develops over the course of the book naturally while you're pantsing, but then when you
Well,
go back and you start adding the voice, are you taking away their growth in a way?
right. Well, I guess it depends on what I would be taking out. Like, I'm just going to use this as an example because my main character is never mean. But if she was supposed to start out mean and then on her journey become a nice person, then I would leave that in. But if something, I don't know, wouldn't fit, like maybe she's frugal or maybe she's a spendthrift, I have to keep up with that. I can't have, say she's frugal, I can't
Mhm.
have her spending money on, expensive purses and pocketbooks and shoes because it's not
Yeah,
going to fit. So then I have to go back. So if she does become a spendthrift, if that's not part of the journey, if she was already supposed to be a spendthrift, I have to go back
yeah.
to that.
Well, how many
Going back
Starbucks are too many Starbucks? That's really the question. No.
Yeah, Starbucks. I know that's a money drainer. I do not care for Starbucks. I know a lot of people are probably not going to like that because I know Starbucks, the line is like around the corner when I see it. But yeah, I don't know. But now I make coffee at home. So
Yeah, and you could have unlimited coffee at home as long as you buy it from the supermarket. Whereas Starbucks, the same price, it's one cup,
yeah, and it's
right?
going up, right? Everything's going up. Inflation's insane. It's
Inflate.
crazy.
I don't even know what that word means, and I agree with you. No.
But yeah, coffee's good. Have to have the coffee.
You got it. You're gonna need the coffee. I go with the diet cherry Pepsi for my caffeine. But yeah,
Oh, so no coffee for you.
no coffee. I drank coffee so much when I was younger that I was just like, I think I'm done with coffee. It was just two
Yeah.
years straight where I was just drinking it and I was a teenager, so like
Wow.
I couldn't sleep. I was like, maybe I should stop. So I just cut it out, and then slowly I got to soda, but trying to cut that out too. But
Yeah.
I still want the Pepsi sponsorship, everybody.
Hey, you never know.
Great stuff.
Hold up that Pepsi.
I'll just have to drink it the other way if they don't sponsor me. All right. So this is a big question I like to ask authors: is when do you know you're done?
Yeah, that's a rough one. That's a rough one. Sometimes you just got to say, okay, I have to stop here because there's so many. As I reread, sometimes I want to plug things in, and I say, you know what? There should have been more emotion in this scene, or there should have been more description in this scene. And then when I get to the end, I mean, it fits, but then I say, oh, is there another way I could have wrapped this up? So I had to learn because I was just working on it. The first story, working on it. And then I just had to say, you know what, this is it. And it's the happy, I like to write happy endings,
Oh yeah, romance.
happily ever afters.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, sometimes you just got to say, cut the cord and send it out there. Yeah, just that's it.
That's what my mom said. She was like, cut the cord, get it out of me. And then I was born, so that's the medical process, I believe.
It is, and the writer's process too.
The writer's process.
Or at least that's what we're making it.
Now, at what do you, when you work with line editors, right? How difficult is the back and forth with that? Like, are you cemented to your lines? You're like, well, I wrote this, so if they have to be adjusted, does that mean I'm a bad writer? Like, are you? Because I know some writers, they deal with that stress, that anxiety. It's like, you're asking me to change these lines. Does that mean I'm bad, or like, or do you take into consideration how this other eyes are really seeing something?
Right. Well, with my second and third book, I worked with the same editor. And she was very kind and very gentle because she would say to me, remember, these are just suggestions. I don't want to change your voice.
Yeah.
So and not really that she changed the voice. Maybe she just made some other corrections, but it's very stressful to send it to the editor and wait to get it back. And then when you get that email and you're like, I'm dying to know what they thought about the story, and I'm dying to
Yeah.
know this. But like, it's so frightening to open it and to see the red and the comments on the side. And because a lot of times we as writers, we think of things and we write it, but it doesn't always connect with the reader. And that's what happens, right? With editors of
Oh
all
yeah.
types. And they don't get it. And even though you're saying to yourself, how does she not get it? This is it's obvious, but it's not. It's obvious to me because I'm the one that's writing the story.
Well, yeah, you have the biased knowledge, like
Yes.
you're emotionally connected to the truth. You know the reveal. So sometimes even seeding the reveal, like earning the right to the ending, sometimes it's so hidden that you're like, oh wait, I thought it was clear because I know it's coming. I know that this is a seed. So sometimes it's okay to be like, all right, maybe I'll add a little bit more. Maybe I'll water that seed a little bit more, and
Yes.
that helps.
Or I just want to add this too.
Yeah, cool.
Or if the editor, I think I forgot what I was going to say. If the editor says, oh, like maybe wants something removed, and then you say, oh my God, I love that. What do you mean? I don't want to take that out. That's difficult too. Like they're
Oh
like,
yeah,
this isn't necessary. But to you, the writer in your head and the story, to you, it is necessary because you see it play out or you hear it
yeah.
or you know what I mean? But they're like, no, get rid of it. And you're like, what do you mean get rid of it? I love it.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of was like taught to me early on in my career, especially with screenwriting and stuff like that, is if you ever work with an editor, always go to 3 editors and have them for a novel do the first first 3 pages or chapter if it's short enough. You don't want to give them a long chapter, and give that chapter to 3 different editors, and then
Yes.
compare the notes and see which ones fits within your vision. Not that they're agreeing with your choices, but that their edit notes align with your vision. And that's
Right.
also very important when trying to find a line editor, or even like for me, like a developmental editor. Like sometimes I'll get a story and I go, I don't think we're going to fit. And they'll be like, why? And I'm like, I, I care about different things than you care about. And my edits are going to be about XYZ. And just reading your first chapter, I know you care more about these things, and I don't know if I can catch that. For
Mm,
example, like I'm a character driven editor. So when I see, like, if the first paragraph is all description, I know I'm not a right fit for you because I know that
mm,
passage isn't doing anything, right? Because
right.
there's a note I always give. I go, I know things are happening, but nothing is happening. And what that means is that 3 or more of these elements are not presented: plot, character development, or world building. Because description for description's sake isn't doing anything. But if the whole first paragraph, the whole first passage is just like the house was tall with cricketing this and that, and the door had its red handle, but nothing. It's not through the POV of a character. It's not adding to the plot. It's just I
Yes.
like the way the house looks, so I wanted to describe. Then I might, because my first note would be you got to add POV. You got to.
And and then it changes the flow of your story too.
Yeah.
Because if you're not on the same page, literally, you know what I mean, then it's going to be a problem and the whole story is going to change.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
Do you find that to
100%.
be correct? So one thing I do want to say is when you do say you mentioned about, sending out samples to so that way you get those sample edits back. First time writer, I think that is like one of the most important things because especially when you don't know where to look. When I wrote my first book, I had no idea where to search from an
Yeah.
editor.
Fiverr.
And I'm sorry, what's that again?
Fiverr. No, no.
Oh, fire. I
Find
know.
me on Fiverr.
I think they I do think a lot of people get their covers maybe from
Yeah,
Fiverr,
from
but I
Fiverr.
never used Fiverr. But it was
$25 cover.
it was it was very difficult for me to find an editor. And then I wound up finding a wonderful girl on Facebook, and this she edited. She was fabulous, though. Don't get me wrong, but I changed the story so much after that. And then I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to say to her, "Hey, I changed the story so much." I felt bad about that. So then my cover designer for the first book, I asked her to help because she wrote books too, but she wasn't actually an editor. And I asked her to help me. I was just so new, so
Yeah.
green. So, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone. And she tried to help me. But I did revise the book a few months ago, and I had to make changes. I was going to leave it. I wasn't going to touch it. And I said to myself, you know what? This book, it's a smoke tree, as a matter of fact, which I know it looks backwards, right? But with my first book, there are mistakes in there and there are typos. Not any longer, I hope, because like I said, I did change it. But you never know. That copy that someone has that's signed or even unsigned, maybe it's going to be worth something someday. You know
Yeah,
what I
you
mean?
never know.
So
You never know.
don't throw away those, right? Those smoke tree books, guys and
Well,
girls.
yeah. Plus, Mary Shelley released Frankenstein. You know what I'm saying? So
A few times though.
yeah,
Was it
yeah.
one book was like revised and revised. I just can't remember which book it was or the author, but it may have very well have been
Well,
Mary Shelley.
The
And I
Hobbit was re-released, rewritten.
I just also made a video on YouTube about books that were supposed to have different endings. The endings were changed. And the same things too with movies. And then sometimes it just doesn't, I guess, sit well with the reader as far
Yeah.
as the book goes or the audience as far
Or
as the
even the
viewer.
writer. The writer's like,
Or
you know what? I don't like this.
yeah,
Because like imagine you're Stephen King. Not that I am not a Stephen King fan, but he is obviously a qualified writer. I just use him because he's a well-known name. But like
yes.
imagine Stephen King started out and his first book, Carrie, got published as it did, right? And but the only way he can get it published is if he changes the ending. And at
Mm,
his age, of course, he's going to publish it. This obviously, if anyone's listening, this isn't what happened. But I'm as an example, uh, of course, as an author, you're going to be like, sure. But then 10 years later, you're such a name, you're like, well, now I could re-release it with the ending I intended. Or even Anne Rice used to do that.
yes.
She would write erotica under a different name. And then when she started getting more developed, she started re-releasing those books under her. And then she became born again Christian. And then she stayed a Christian, but was like, I'm not that deep into it anymore. So I'm going to go back to vampire books. So like you can change as an author and you're not
Yes.
beholden to even your first published first version of the book,
That's true. And some readers are going to want to see what's different. They find it
Yeah.
very interesting if they loved the story. I mean, some I'm sure would be upset depending on the book, the story, the author. Some would say, "No, don't change it. I love that story. You can't do that to me." But some readers may say, "Wow, I never looked at it that way. I didn't. That's a fabulous ending." And some authors too write multiple endings in one book.
Oh yeah, well sometimes, yeah, especially if it's a choose your own adventure.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Pick your ending, which is interesting also because it just opens up the mind.
Well, yeah, it's those books where it's like, if you want the character to do this, go to page 37. If you want him to do this, go to page 52. Um, but when it comes to even new authors trying to figure out what editors write, they also sometimes don't understand the terminology or the need of the tools. Like for
Mm,
example, I speak to a lot of authors, and rarely do they get alpha readers. And if they do, they're just using them as beta readers. And I'm like, well, that's not what an alpha reader has. A very specific purpose that has nothing to do with did I like this book. Whereas a beta reader is more about the experience, and the alpha is more about the technical. Like, is the plot working? How's the pacing? Are the characters
yeah.
staying true to their arcs, etc.
And I wish I've done that with my books, but I just feel like I want to get the books out and I don't do that. And these readers could find so much for the author. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Before the book gets released, before it gets
absolutely.
published. But I do not do that. And I did say with my next book, I am going to get some beta readers. I'm going to have somebody look this over other than the editor. But I haven't written another book since my third one, just the short stories. And I don't know, they're very helpful,
Yeah.
but I haven't used any.
But the benefit though is when you have alpha readers, usually you send them like a chunk of chapters. Like maybe the first 5 or whatever. Well, they're working on that. If you're already done with your book, well, they're reading. You can start working on your next book. So that's
Yes.
a lot of authors do that. Where you're like, how did they release 3 or 4 books in a year? It's because their one book is being worked on they're already working on their next book. So it
Yep.
allows you to say, all right, I could take a break from that, which is also healthy when you do your read through, when you do your cleanup. But the other thing is sometimes they don't even know what editors are. They don't understand a developmental editor is not the same as a line editor versus a copy editor versus a proof
Yes.
editor. Like there are different variations of editors that are each important in their own right. But I've worked with clients where uh, they would write like a first draft and then hire an editor to fix the book, like a line editor to fix their book, and then they'll clean up the book. And I'm like, well, then why did you hire the line editor?
Right, right. Well, my editor does it all. So I don't know. Is that a good thing? Is that not a good thing?
It
She has a,
depends.
she has a package, and she lists it,
Yeah.
and she does everything. So I work with the same woman for, like I said, book 2 and book 3. I haven't released another book since then, just my short stories, which I just worked on myself. I could have got maybe some readers to look them over, but I get very excited and I just want to share the stories.
Yeah.
But yes, a lot of people just think an editor is an editor and just has that one job and everything's covered in that
Yeah.
one job.
We do it all.
But yeah, we do it all.
Yeah.
Like Home Depot has everything.
That's right.
But
It is a self-publishing industry now, and you can do
yes.
whatever you want. But like obviously we've at one point or another read a very successful book that had a spelling error or the grammar was weird, but that also comes into voice. Like sometimes the Oxford comma is there, and some people are like, I don't think that's needed, or like you
Mm,
forget this word or that word, but you're like, yeah, but they're just trying to create a rhythm, and that's important too, because sentence rhythm and adjustments and lengths are important too. So sometimes it's okay to kind of contradict, like he and I or she and I is probably more grammatically correct than me and her or whatever, you know but
right,
like
right.
sometimes you're looking, it's like in poetry when someone says, oh, your grammar's weird in poetry, you're like, but it's poetry, it's a free verse pro.
Exactly. Like I'm a New Yorker. So someone commented, are you from Long Island?
Long Island and Brooklyn
Okay. So, okay.
represent. Tight Heights.
Brooklyn in the house.
Brooklyn
So,
and the Warriors.
oh, what the heck? No, because I'm on Long Island too. So I thought I saw when I looked you up, I thought it said Long Island.
Yeah, Long
Um,
Island, Mastic, Shirley, Ronkonkoma, you name it. I've been there. I lived there.
okay.
Farmingville.
Nice beach in Mastic, right? If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah. Nice beach if you go there during the day, but not at night.
But not in the
It's a
evening.
lot of stabbies.
But yeah, oh yeah. Oh, there was something I wanted to say. What the heck was it? We were talking about something. I'm not
And you
sure. All right.
you said me living in Long Island. That's how you started it off.
Yeah, but it was something I was going to say before that, and then for some reason I redirected it to Long Island. I think
Okay.
it was.
Well, the
It,
last thing
it,
I said had to do with editors, and when you get the editor, uh, you know, so sometimes they're not. Oh, we were talking about how like all some editors think they do it all. Like they're just like and writers are like, yeah,
right,
I guess an editors will get one, be one all. That was the last
right.
thing we were talking.
Yeah, that wasn't it. But I talk that happens to me a lot. That's why I like to write things down. If I can't get to the laptop because this happens a lot. It's probably from all the coffee I drink. I wanted to say something I don't remember, but that's okay. Let's. It'll probably come to me.
Yeah, you'll message me at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have figured it out.
I know. Can we
Care Bears.
can we somehow edit that? Get that back in there? But yeah, I don't remember.
Film
But
yourself on the phone. I'll sneak it in. I'll edit it.
yeah, but I love to write, and I just want to encourage other people if they haven't published yet, or if they haven't even sat down to write anything, just to write. I mean, and of course to read. Reading is very important. I don't know if a lot of people that want to write understand that, because that's where you learn so much. And when you were talking, maybe this is what I was going to say, when you were talking about the length and sentences and, you know, the flow and the way things go from the writer's perspective that maybe the editor doesn't, pick up on, or one of the readers don't pick up on. We get this from reading other people's work, how things click and how they fit.
Mm.
Like sometimes if I read a sample online, if somebody says, what do you think about this? Just in a public forum, I never comment though, because if I don't have anything, positive to say, I never want anybody to think they shouldn't write. And
Yeah,
a writer, someone who wants to write, can right away shy away from it if they hear the wrong thing or if they read the wrong thing about a snippet that they shared. And it drives me nuts when I see people criticize something that someone shared that they wrote.
yeah.
It's their work, and it's something they want to try to do. So maybe what happened to positive reinforcement? But anyway, reading is so important. So reading and writing together. It's what I mean. It's a
Well, you got to
combination.
read to write.
Yeah. That's how I believe
Yeah.
it should be and it should go. And sometimes you read other people's work and it gets you in that writing mood. You know what I mean? The mood to write.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Yeah. And as
ambience,
far as
atmosphere.
compliments go, I always tell people this is terribly good. So they spend most of the time trying to figure out what it is. Is it a compliment?
Yeah, that's the comedian side in you, I guess, right? This is terribly good.
This is terribly good. If I had the will, I would.
So was it
Um,
terrible or is it good?
is it good? But when it comes to the idea of just for people that sometimes they get nervous because they're like, I don't read, I don't read. If you listen to audiobooks or you watch movies or televisions, that's still the same as reading in the sense because what reading when people say you have to read to write, they're not saying you have to read like anything. They're saying by reading, you're starting to see the consistency in storytelling. You're seeing what you like, what you don't like. You get to see characters making choices, having positions where they, are challenged and like they either change completely, somewhat, or not at all, and double down. So when you watch a movie or a television show, it is, or even listen to audiobooks, it is the same process as reading. The whole point of being a writer is to understand the flow of story and narrative. And if however that's coming in, it's coming in. Because remember, the first set of stories that were ever expressed were around campfires. They were audio,
Mm.
so
And what about carved on walls?
see, yeah, draw, right? So they drew it out instead of it being words and letters, right?
Yes.
So, you know, don't be discouraged if you aren't an avid reader. Just pay attention to any form of
Yes.
storytelling.
Well, I'm not saying someone has to be an avid reader,
Oh
but
yeah,
I do feel that you have to pick up a book once in a while because you have to get that, to me, the visual flow of the words and how they connect with your mind and how maybe you see it or don't see it. Like before I could write, when I was very young, we lived in a remote area. It's also on my Amazon bio, but we lived in a remote area. I watched a lot of TV. Now, a lot of people or other parents might have said, your daughter's always in front of the TV. But you know what the TV taught me? Like you said, you don't have to read because you can watch TV. TV taught me pacing.
mm-hmm.
TV taught me so much. So while I watched TV and I learned, like I would know the turning point at such a young age when maybe the grand scheme was going to be exposed, or when the movie was coming to an end, or that turning point. I
Oh yeah.
learned that from watching TV at, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. I was addicted to the TV, but I also played with dolls, and the dolls helped me with dialogue and create scenes. And sometimes we would pick it up the next day, me and my dolls, because
Yeah.
I'm an only child.
Listen, you need to continue the episodes.
So yes, so now I did remember what I was going to say. This is why I asked you from Long Island. So as we were talking, I did remember because we were talking about, you said about writing and how I guess something about, I guess, the voice of the writer. I think I used voice earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
since I'm from New York, someone did comment and talking about terribly good. I don't know if this was an insult, a compliment, or just an observation they made, but they said I write like I talk because
Oh,
I'm a New Yorker. So in my first two books, The Smoke Tree and The Smoke Tree Broken Branches, there's a lot of grandma instead of grandmother,
oh yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
there's grandma. There's words that the way I speak, because that's how my characters speak
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in my first two books.
Yeah.
So, and then getting back to the reading, no, I don't feel like you have to be an avid reader, but I feel like you should read something, because I think there's a big difference between the way we visualize the pictures on TV and the storytelling and the way we listen to it in an audiobook. Just like when we write, if we write something and it sounds correct or it sounds like it's flowing correctly, and then we read it aloud and then we go, whoa, that's not, there's no flow there. It's
Yeah.
broken. It's not, it's not paced right. It's not comfortable. It's not, you know what I mean? So
Feels
I
like
feel like,
statements.
I actually feel like we should do everything. I feel like we should watch movies, we should read books, we should listen to audiobooks, we should read our work back to ourselves. And if
Mhm.
people are lucky enough to have the what is it when the computer reads it back to you? The read
Oh,
aloud.
the text to speech.
And even though, even well, it's a read aloud on my Microsoft, but even though it sounds like a computer, it's not smooth. I still can pick up things that need to be corrected from that, you know, voice,
Yeah.
from the read aloud. So I just feel like if you can, if you can't, I don't want anybody to stop trying to write a story or continue writing stories either. I just feel like it all fits in writing, movies, audiobooks,
Mhm.
acting. I just feel like it all fits in. That's why a lot of actors, right? They write books, they turn to directing, they go instead of in front of the camera, they go behind the camera. It's interesting. It's a process, it's a journey, and storytelling, right? Since the beginning of time, since the
It
dawn of man.
it's all a process, and I think what we know today is gonna be different tomorrow, because imagine, Tolkien would not be published today without some edits. It's
Right,
just
right.
the style of that writing, as, influential as it was and is still today, way back then, would not be published today just because of the length, because of, the
The
exposition is
word choices, perhaps.
yeah, and and it's hard to think of that because you're like, but it's Lord of the Rings, and you're like, yeah, but it's why Dracula was able to be published back then as a diary entry book, but today people be like, what is this? This is difficult, right? But it was its
Mm,
first of its kind, or it was, and sometimes when I'm working with a client, they'll be like, yeah, but I like the style of this book, and it's like 100 years old, and you're like, yeah, but if you want to write that way, it's fine, but it's not doing what needs to happen in narrative. It's not, it's missing a lot, or it's all exposition, or it's all there's no character arcs, because it's just like watching uh you ever watch like a black and white film from like the
yes,
1920s? It's just a
yes,
play. So the camera's stationary and it's just people on a set and they're moving back and forth, right?
right, right.
Imagine we just kept filming that way and going, well, I like that style. Yeah, but now there's character development. Actors are embracing moments as emotionally truthful. The camera moves and actually speaks. The camera becomes a character in itself. We're understanding what a two shot is, a French double,
Yes,
establishing shot, right?
it
We
can
have
get,
to evolve with the techniques.
yes, and it could just get so technical. I'm not in that area, but I do know, as far as directing and cameras and camera angles, and some directors, like, they brag about, let's say, Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg. I know, and as far as cameras go, you could create such a scene. Sometimes the camera just goes back and forth, but it gets the point across. You know what I mean?
Oh, with the panning. Well, Stephen King is actually notorious for using a one shot but the camera changes position based on the movement of the actors. So like the actors create the new framing. And if you watch like Hook, a very underrated, great movie with Robin Williams as an older Peter Pan. Uh,
Right,
if anyone ever remembers the when they come home from an event and Wendy's front door has the glasses smashed open and they walk in and then they see like that's one shot and they look through the hole of the door,
right.
and then as they come through and open it up, it goes to Robin Williams' face, and then where he's looking, but it's one shot. They aren't cutting. They're
I didn't
just
see Hook, but now I want to see, so
yeah.
I
It's
know what you're talking about. I
it's
did not
it's
see Hook.
brilliant. It's and but again, that wouldn't be something they did in the 1920s. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock started inventing character camera, so where like the camera itself became a part of the narrative and was almost as if it was like it was literally watching, you know. But writers also have to remember you can use a camera in your writing. right? So there's your establishing shot, which is you kind of give a little bit of description of, you a lot of writers do that. They use the first paragraph of a chapter to be like, this is where they are, right? Like, let's set the mood, right?
This is where
And
they are.
then they zoom in a little bit, and now it's a two shot. So it's Stephanie and Thomas are sitting at a table talking, right? And I kind of play that out. And then you go, all right, but now Stephanie's going to talk. So we're going to go to a close up for her, right? And or a mid shot. So it's just her talking. But then we're going to look at Thomas, and now he's on the page. And then you're like, yeah, but I kind of want to get in Stephanie's mind. So that's going to be a close up. And we're just seeing a reaction shot to it, right? So you can look at writing with a camera, and it'll help you pull out. Because if you're too close too often, or like the way you're looking at the shot in your head, you could drown out the pacing. So you got to be like, wait, pull it
Interesting.
out a little bit. And
But
let
when
it
you say camera, you mean a mental camera,
Yeah, it's a
right?
mental camera.
In your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. The more descriptive you get, the further back you are. The closer you get to the mind, right? If you could get, without being like, even just so anyone knows who's writing, like there is thought where it's italicized or they thought about, but in narrative, it could also be like, Bran sat next to Jon Snow writing, knowing this was the first of many outings where he has been allowed to come with the brothers. That's a thought. That is a thought. It's just not italicized, but that is a close-up camera.
Right.
Right. We're close to Bran, as close as we can get. We're inside him, and then you want to pull back out and you'd be like, all right, now the horses are moving. And now we're going to see Rob Stark. And then we're going to, all right, Jon Snow is the bastard son. Right now we're learning. Now we're getting Bran is now looking at his brothers. Right. And then we see the father take the sword off, but then it gets closer to the father. So like, that's all camera movement,
Yeah.
I don't know.
The inner camera.
The inner camera. But again, if you describe a scene, that's called an establishing a shot. That's probably as far back as you can get.
Right.
They do it in shows and movies, when it's like they'll show like in Flash, they'll show like the police precinct, and then you're like, oh, that's where they are. They established
right.
the location, so which is important. But as a writer, you can think, wait, I know I did the establishing shot by using the first the paragraph to describe the atmosphere and mood, but let me remember that they're in that location by allowing that to feed into the descriptions of the character's movement.
Right. Going
It's
around the desk, or
that's right.
lifting the fireplace poker to remind them that they're in a living room.
They're in a living room. That's right. Yeah. Let's or they move closer on the couch, they're tossing their shoes onto the floor, falling onto the whatever, the room carpet, the area carpet.
Getting back to what you said about writing, how it's changed over time, look at banned books, which I feel no book should be banned. I think that's ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people should have the right not to read those books. And obviously, books that are like Mein Kampf is a terrible book that was written by a terrible human being. But the value of that book is we can learn what not to do. We can learn how horrible this made us feel, or how destructive and chaotic this mind of this failed artist was who became a dictator, right? So I think if we erase the terrible, we cannot truly embrace the growth, and I think art, and writing is definitely art, is so important to challenging our souls, because how do we know we're good people or moral people if we are not challenged on that morality? And this goes back to Russia, where during Stalin's era, they would paint over paintings. They wanted to get rid of anything. They got rid of all the hierarchies and the higher status, and destroyed things and melted down gold and important things and art. So they took away that culture, and I think even bad culture is important for us to create positive culture.
Yes,
because we have to be able to rate ourselves against that.
And I mean, this is life. If somebody writes something that is offensive to someone, unfortunately, That's how people are. People are offensive, or people
Mhm.
are terrible. People can be mean, and just like people can be great or
Yes.
extremely kind and generous. There's also that other side, and there is. I feel like we should be able to read about that in books because it teaches even the youngest mind that you can't trust everyone or don't take everyone or everything at face value
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
someone could be tricking you or someone could be lying to you or pulling the wool over your eyes. Because if we live in a world with banned books and we can't talk about this and we can't talk about that, how do the children grow when they grow up? They'll be like nothing, like they, you know what I mean, like rose-colored glasses, and then they're so wounded when they find out how the real world really is. And some people don't find that out until they're adults, even in the regular world. Forget about the banned books, but I just
Yeah,
mean
forget the books, yeah. But,
people walk around thinking everybody's great, their family's great, this is great, everything's great, their coworkers, and then one day, boom, they're like, they wake up and go, wow, I can't believe that. That's devastating to people. But that's how I feel about books. Books help people learn. Books are important, and I don't feel like any book should be banned. I'm not saying it's great to write a offensive book or a terrible book or the book that you mentioned, but this is life, and these things
yeah.
happen. There's hideous things that go on in the world, and that's
Well,
just the
it's
nature of it.
choice. It comes down to choice. If you take away the choice, there is no choice. If you say you can't
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
these books,
Yeah.
uh,
We should be
it's
able
like
to choose what we want to read and what we want to watch on TV.
yeah,
I won't watch certain things, but I'm not saying wipe them off the screen. Nobody should see them just because
yeah, but
I'm not a fan of violence and gory horror. I used to like gory horror when I was a teenager. I
yeah,
can't watch it anymore. It makes me sick. But that doesn't mean that because I can't watch it,
that they
nobody
should
else could be
stop
watching
making
it
it.
either.
Yeah.
I mean, how selfish is that? Some people like gory horror.
But if you look at art as an abstract philosophy, imagine they decided that red was offensive, right? Red
Hmm.
is one of the primary colors. So if you take away red and they're like, you can't use red, red can't be a part of anything. Now you're gonna lose all these other colors from orange to brown to pink to
Yes.
it's just it's an essential part of the experience. And but also you get to question things. Imagine you saw somebody reading Mein Kampf and you're like, why are you reading that? And then they
Mm,
start explaining, like, it's like, well, I my great great grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and I wanted to understand the evil in this person's mind, so I can truly educate people on how to be better, how to not have that happen again. And you're like,
right.
oh, good, because I was originally going to be like, you're a horrible person, but I realized no, you're actually trying to educate yourself and evolve and learn the tools to be morally better, morally positive, morally, all these things. So it's
Yes.
like we can't really judge without follow-up questions. Just how we perceive things is already biased. It's you know
Yes.
that's why I don't tell people what my faith is, because if I was like, I'm a this, then it's like I automatically get blanketed over with all these biases,
Yes.
and it's not worth it. So whatever.
Yeah. It gets
the
hairy. It gets
Yeah,
hairy,
yeah,
that's for sure.
the
The
art
car,
of
the
life.
car, the car you drive,
Yep, the car you drive.
politics, which we won't even get into politics, but the car you drive, sometimes that's related to politics, but
Yeah,
really
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. I mean, people just make judgments sometimes. Like you said, they're reading a book, and if they don't have those follow-up questions, they think that person is a lunatic and they want to run as far as they can. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, I was watching this funny video. Well, it's not funny. It's terrible, but it was funny because, like, it's ignorance. It's what we're talking about. This woman grabbed a flag, a blue and white flag from a side of a business, and ripped it off and was like stomping on it. It was like, I can't believe they would put this up there, with the war in Palestine and right. And the business owner comes and goes, "What are you doing?" And they're like, I can't believe you have this flag up there. And he goes, it's a Greek flag. I'm Greek.
Oh, I think I heard something like this,
And
similar to it. Oh my gosh, because
it
yeah,
was like, it's Greek.
ignorance. There you
It's Greek.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my home country
They
flag.
saw, why don't you like Greece? I don't
Yeah,
get it.
what did we even do? Come in, have some Greek food. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. Because it is same colors.
It's yeah,
But
so
hey,
true, so true.
perception is an evil thing if we don't understand how to question ourselves. We have to be willing to, which goes back to what we're saying about writing. If we don't have an editor, we can't question ourselves. So to learn how to question ourselves, we have to have other people come in and give us our words. But it doesn't mean, again, like you said something very important, where it's like they are just suggestions. They're not judgments on your writing style. They're just, again, that's why I look at I go, maybe I'm not the editor for you because I have a style, I have a preference. So it's always good to find what works for you, et cetera, et cetera. You know?
Right. And I also will talk about editors. I just want to add this too for anyone who is seeking an editor for the first time. Some people say they are editors, but doesn't mean they are. So you always have to do your homework and your research on that too, because
yes, learn what an editor is. And even in your case where they said they do everything, as long as they do everything in order, that's important too. Because imagine somebody's developmental editing your stuff while line editing, while doing the copy editing. It's like, well, some of these things can't be done until there's a process.
Right.
That's
I know. That's another show.
Yeah, that's a whole other show. But with that, I always ask the same question of every author at the end of the show. So, Stefanie Nici, what is one piece of advice you discovered about writing, either through someone else telling you or you discovering it yourself, that completely changed the way you approach the writing process?
Oh wow. I guess don't drift away from first person and into other POVs, because we can do that sometimes.
Where it goes from I to he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And let me see what else. Don't rush your story at the end. I hear even with the traditionally published book, some readers say, wow, I feel like that story was a little rushed at the end. I have kind of found myself as a writer too. And then I'm like, oh, I'm rushing that too much. You know what I mean? Because you just want to finish it. You just want to finish it and say, my story's done. So that, I don't know. I got nothing really other than that comes, and there's no rules. They talk about rules, but rules are made to be broken. And who made these rules anyway? Like they say, you shouldn't start your story with the weather or the time of day. But why not? Maybe it's very important. I think the movie, I can't think of a book right now. Oh, yes. The clock struck, what is that, 1984? Oh, I have it. What is that? I know we got to wrap it up.
Clock struck 12.
You know what? Yeah, I don't know what, something just fell. 1984 starts with, it was a bright, cold day in April when the clocks were striking 13. Now that, not only do they give the weather, but they also give the time of day, which would be a double no-no to some people. You know what I mean? But it's very important in the telling of the story.
Yeah, well, it sets the place and time. Literally sets the place and time. So
yes.
But again, every rule that you learn, the more you understand it, the more you can play with it, and the more you can break it.
Yes.
Again,
you're the storyteller. It's your story.
Yeah.
Tell the story. That's why some people say, I love the writing style of blah, blah, blah. And then some people go, oh, I cannot stand the way this person writes. You know what I mean? Because so some people love one author and some people do not care for the way they tell their stories. But it's you and the way you tell your story. And just keep on telling those stories. Keep on writing. And just, if you love it, do it.
Yeah. Just get it. You got to try. Fail to succeed, as they say. And real quick, one of the funny things when I'm watching TV or movies or anything with friends, they're like, I'll call out what's about to happen. They're like, how did you know that? I go, I think of the dumbest possible thing that could happen. And then I hope they do the opposite, but then they don't. And that's how I know, because like there's writing and then there's bad writing and then there's good writing. And bad writing to me is when they're like, well, what works?
Right. What would fit here right now?
How do we get through this moment with the most people liking it? And you're just like, okay,
right. Yeah, that's not good either. They don't want to maybe the writer doesn't want to offend people, or when my cover designer was helping me edit my first book, there was a mention of something in the book, And she said, well, you know what? I don't think a lot of people would like that. And I think you don't want to offend people. You should take it out. So I didn't know any better. And it really maybe changed something that it shouldn't have changed, because now that wasn't in the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a term. It wasn't bad, but she found it offensive. But then again, see, she wasn't really an editor. She was
Yeah.
the cover designer. So, but I took her word for it, because she was in the business longer than me, and now I know that I shouldn't have did that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You should have stuck to your
I should
guns.
have stuck to my guns and said, I'm keeping it. It was up to me anyway, but I took her advice because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
my first.
again, that's the learning curve, right? You got to
Yes.
learn as a writer, and as you start discovering your voice and the things you want to challenge. Honestly, to go back to the book banding thing before we end it, it's like, how do we learn who we are as a society if we don't challenge and push the lines of controversy, right? We have to be willing to be offended to find what works for us, what we stand for. And it's like that old thing. It's like what is it? You can't have courage in moments where there's no danger.
Right.
You can't be a good person because you say you are. You have to physically do the things that make you good. And you can only
Exactly.
know what's good if you understand what's bad, or things that but again, that's all scale, right? It's all gradient
Right.
scale. It's like, what is good to someone else is not good to somebody else. But you as a human being have to figure out your morality through understanding what's good and what's bad, which is why we don't have slavery today, because we
Right.
know as a collective that it is terrible.
Yep, that is
You know,
terrible. And how do we write characters if we have to, pull back on who they really are? Like, as we write in the character, like I like the process where I'm writing, I get so far in the story, and then the characters come to life and they really write the story for me, which is great. But I'm not doing them any justice if
yeah,
I'm holding back who they really are. How can the reader fully get the idea of who that character is if I'm holding back? And then that's not fair to the reader either. And that makes like a very bland story if you have to watch what you're doing. So, in that respect. But anyway, I know it's time to wrap it up.
it's
Thank you
time to wrap
so much.
Yes, Stefanie Nici, everybody. All her information will be on the description below. I really appreciate you coming on and reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'd like to be on the right mindset."
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad I saw the post about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Emma Bennett, right? That's her author's name on there. She has a nice group on Facebook that brings people together, and she does promotions for people. And she's an editor and a
And
lovely lady.
YouTube too. She's also on YouTube. She has a big YouTube channel to help writers. Yep,
Yep,
Emma.
she's
Hi,
British.
Emma.
She's British, which is always
Yes,
nice.
yes. She's always on YouTube, and she's always sharing her journey as a writer. Yep,
That's right. That's
helpful
right.
videos. That's for sure.
She's a lovely, lovely person and
Yes. Thank you,
excellent
Emma.
conversationalist. So with that, anyway, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. This was The Right Mindset. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.